right. Well, welcome to episode 6, right? Is that where we're at already? Of hashtag LaidOffLife. So, wow, Jigna, can you believe that? 6 already?
I can't believe it. It's really amazing it's amazing how quickly it's going by, and we're just loving speaking to everyone. The last few episodes have been amazing. Just really good tips of mindfulness and just being a global citizen and then networking. So I've learned a lot, and I'm super excited about our guest for this episode.
Likewise.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a recruiter. He's been a recruiter for over 20 years. His name is Satish Velanki, and I am super excited because I have so many questions for him. I just don't know how to get noticed. So that's what we're going to be talking a lot about,
Yeah.
And then some resume tips and many other items.
Absolutely, because I'm sure everybody else out there who's watching this like us, you've been putting your resume in and applying to things either through LinkedIn or through their online system or wherever else it might be. And sometimes you go into the black hole and you don't know what happened. And then other times you get a call back, but then nothing happens from there. So, it's just kind of trying to figure that out. So I think getting some insider tips from a recruiter will be great. So I'm ready to bring him on.
All right, Mr. Velanki, we have Satish Velanki with us. I am super excited to speak with you today. I've been waiting for a very, very long time to speak because I have a million questions for you. We need your guidance right now. So, Satish, we would love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go into our questions.
First of all, it's a pleasure to meet you, Jigna. It's been a while. It's been a pleasure, and a pleasure to meet you too, Jennifer. I think we hit off very well in terms of our early conversation. So I'm glad that I'm a part of this podcast. Firstly, a quick introduction. I have been in the talent acquisition, recruitment, sourcing space for almost 20 years now. I have worked with a Fortune 500 company. I have had the pleasure of leading teams and seeing the teams grow from a small footprint of 3 or 4 people to almost like 30, 40 member teams. So I've pretty much done it also. From a recruitment perspective, I'll be honored to share whatever I have learned over a period of time to you all. So looking forward to this podcast.
Awesome, Satish. So tell us a little bit about your life. What are you doing? Where are you from? And where are you living now?
Good question. I've been in the US for almost 22 years now. I came in as a software developer, just like pretty much a lot of my friends in this country have been. I've been here in Jersey for the entirety, but I have actually traveled US. I have consulted in various places. My very first assignment was in Kansas, the great state of Kansas. I was there for almost 6 months, consulted there. I've been to Delaware. I've been to Virginia. And Jersey is the place that I am. My heart is. I live here in Jersey. I live close to central New Jersey. That's where I am actually from.
So you came over to the U.S. and started in Kansas?
Yeah. Yeah. And shockingly, the first food was like a salad because I didn't know what else to add. The first thing I ordered was salad. And they took me to Cheesecake Factory. And you should know Cheesecake Factory and the portion sizes. That was something to see, really. See the size of the salad plate. That was
So Jigna tells me you have this background in recruiting, but you started out as a developer, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was a technologist.
So, okay, right? You're here because everybody wants to know what recruiters know that we don't know as we're all trying to find a job. Dun, dun, dun.
So Satish, have you been impacted by the recent downturn? Tell us a little bit about what you've seen around you as well as for yourself. Being a recruiter, I'm sure you've sort of seen what's going on out there.
I was impacted by this pandemic too, but I think it's a lot different than 2008 because this is of a different scale at which we are seeing this pandemic actually shutting down jobs and so on. And the fear is the uncertainty of it as to when this is going to end. But I think other than that, it's very similar to 2008 in terms of the impact that it has created. It's just created a lot of nervousness in people. But I think from a recruiting perspective, all I could say is that there's definitely going to be roles that's going to come available for the right kind of skills. And there is all I encourage everybody is to stay up positive and be your own self. Don't forget to express yourself in whichever shape or form, be it in your resume. And we'll talk about that in terms of how to frame it and how to put yourself out there. But I think the market is definitely going to turn. And I'm sure that at the time when it's going to turn, you all will have the right set of skills and you just need to project it to people for you to get the next big opportunity for yourself.
When you say the market is going to turn, have you seen anything in the news or by industry professionals or some of the thought leaders when that might be, or are there any speculations or thoughts around that?
This perpetual optimism coming in from a whole bunch of the economists and also a lot of the politicians who rightfully want to do this V-shaped curve in case of economy recovery. They don't want to see a big trough and peak up. They would like to have it like spike up very quickly. I think there's definitely a reason for that optimism because I think because of the uncertainty of it, right, on this particular one, because it's not that the roles or the kind of work that the clients were able to give to people are not there. It's just that they don't know whether they would want to spend on those discretionary spend kind of roles. There are still jobs. There are still people gainfully employed on a lot of them. Probably each one of them are doing 2 or 3 people's job right now because of the stress that it's putting on them. And frankly speaking, a lot of the companies are actually trying to save money for themselves for the future growth that they want to put their money in, right? And that's basically what I feel. And there's definitely a lot of optimism in the market. You could hear from every single media outlet who want to really make this a V-shaped curve. And we all hope for all ourselves that it's a V-shaped curve. So the next big thing is around the corner.
I think it's really interesting because I thought kind of the thing that was going to happen was when companies start looking at the end of this last quarter, or if their fiscal year ends in August, because I know a lot of companies, and I've heard talk about, September is when a lot of the economists and politicians are really hoping that next spike. The interesting thing, though, in just the last few days, as we've seen the spike in the COVID in states like where we're at in Texas and Florida and Arizona, and those things are happening, I wonder if that's going to push back again, the job search. Because I even seen jobs that were posted prior to COVID, and then they were taken off those job boards. And then I just saw them like reposted like Friday of last week. And now I'm kind of curious, like, will that slow back down? And so it's just kind of like, do you put your resumes all out there again if they had these things prior to like right before COVID all did the big blow up? Or so do you put them, back out there, or do you just kind of hold on and wait and see? It's just a lot of, I think, confusion right now because it's going to change again.
It is going to change. And I think my philosophy towards this is to stay at it, to be consistent. And I think to make a simple checklist for yourself, and I would say it all starts with your own plan in terms of what you really want to, for a lack of any other better word, I would use this word, marketing plan, right, for your own self, or a targeted list of companies that you would like to, or the targeted areas of work that you really want to go after, right? Make a list of themselves for you so that you identify those specific companies, and then you look for their roles, and then you stay at it. I think it's just somebody told me, one of my peers told me, even looking for a job is a job by itself. So with that means you have to stay disciplined at it. And my earnest advice to anybody who is looking out for the next opportunity is to not let this thing on your chin. Take it on your chin. You have to move on because you have to be at it, because you have to have the way putting a targeted list together. going at it diligently. I think that is the secret for it to be happening. And I think, to your point, Jennifer, we really don't know why companies would actually put something out if it's not real. But I know for a fact there are various reasons, and I think it's far too elaborate for me to talk about because it's very complicated and sometimes cumbersome for people to understand. But I think there is a reason why sometimes it goes up, and it's a lot of it has got to do with systems and the way how systems work and so on and so forth.
That makes sense. So you were talking a little bit about you creating your own marketing plan for yourself. So where does one sort of start? Let's say I am just laid off and I have absolutely no idea what to do because I haven't been in the job market for a long, long time. Or what do I do?
Fantastic question. The first rule of thumb for any working professional, be it you're a career entrant or you're a experienced individual, you need to have a LinkedIn profile. And LinkedIn is a free tool. And it doesn't really, you don't really have to pay to the bills and whistles to actually get this thing done. But all you need to do is establish a presence, just like anybody would have a Snapchat, Facebook, and Twitter kind of an account. You just open an account on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn interface is very intuitive. It will teach you what you really want to talk about. Like there are sections where you can put your picture, and also you can say, what do you want to know about me? Like simple stuff like that, right? So I would say if you really want to be in the professional world looking for something, I would say you have to have a LinkedIn profile. You don't have to be verbose. It can be a simple, what we call a copy of your same resume that you have, and you can pretty much have that same information out there on LinkedIn. The biggest difference is you're actually creating a digital footprint for yourself in a professional manner. That's the big area where a lot of recruiters and recruitment companies come to look for qualified professionals. So I think that is the number one thing for anybody to do, is to create a footprint in LinkedIn and create one for yourself.
Do you think that people should make a video post about themselves to sell themselves to a recruiter? I had this just crazy thought, like, should I put a video out there? Because we've been doing so much video work, I'm getting used to myself on video, So I'm like, should I be like, hey, I'm Jennifer Crowfoot, I'm available for hire. Let me tell you all the things I can do for you.
Actually, as quirky as it sounds, but that's the best way to put yourself out there. And you hit the nail on the head, because there are various ways to get out there. It doesn't really have to be a templatized resume format. But a lot of people do put themselves out there by writing simple articles about what they see. As you say, LinkedIn has a wealth of information in terms of the news, the trending news, a whole bunch of articles. Pick one that resonates with you, and then you can write something about it. Be creative. Write a simple blurb. You don't really have to go too verbose. Just make a simple blurb. That way you put your personality on what exactly is your take on that particular information. You really don't have to work too hard. Even videos, right? The ones like we do, the podcast, is a simple way of making sure that your voice is being heard and you basically are talking about your own self. So videos, images, and a lot of people are qualified from a whole bunch of certifications. There are a lot of people who have professional certifications, and you can make digital versions of them by taking a simple image and then having them uploaded on your LinkedIn profile. That way, if you're a mechanical engineer and who has done some specialty in robotics, cutting and stuff like that, you can take a picture of those certificates and be a repository for display for people to know that you have really got the certification on that.
It's your virtual certificate wall, right?
Literally. Yeah, it's like this wall right there. A whole bunch of pictures. That way you get to the world gets to see all of what you know.
I saw someone post their resume, just took a picture of their resume, just posted on their LinkedIn. This was someone who has over 30 years of experience, and I'm not sure how well that is received. Do you recommend something like that, or just take a picture of the certificates and call it a day?
I wouldn't just take a picture, but I think resume, as you all know, is a way of putting yourself out there by showcasing your talents and your skill sets, your experience, and your background, right? So the right way to put it is, as I said, LinkedIn has its own template that you can work through, or as you say, you can take a picture and call it a day. But I think there's a little bit of an effort that you need to showcase also. It's not just about taking a picture. That will work fine. That's absolutely fine. But I think you have an opportunity to be a lot more creative in showcasing what you do. And sometimes a resume might just not be, it's just a simple snapshot, whereas LinkedIn enables you to have that information and you have the ability to go and tweak it in the sense it's not like a one and done kind of a situation because as career evolves, your experience evolves, your target looks, your targeting is different. You have the ability to keep that refreshed along the line. So I would say just taking an image is good for starters, but I think you just have to work on it in terms of keeping the LinkedIn information more active and then more adapt to people to listen.
So if it was like me with the 30 years of experience, if someone was putting that as a picture, I'm afraid if someone like me as a recruiter looking at it, like I'd have to like blow it up to like the picture's so big and then the word, I'd be like, what does that say with my readers on? So I just maybe not what I would go for. But I think, one of the other questions we could dive into here in a second, though, is around the idea of someone we talked to the other day. We talked with Fred about, do you put everything in your LinkedIn profile or do you save a little extra to have in your resume that you need to put in? So
it's a very good question. And I think it is also about there are a little bit of a tease for yourself and for the guys to actually snip on, for the hiring managers to look for. I'm of a fundamental belief that you need to do your best representation of what your experience is all about for the world. But I think you need to really hold back just a notch so that there is an interest in having that conversation. Because fundamentally, I believe there has to be an interest and there has to be a conversation. So you need to do enough information for you to put for people to have a conversation with you. And when they have the conversation, then you can wow them with more facts, or you can always pull one of your ace and say, hey, did you know that I did this too? Because that is also a good way actually to have somebody get that interest for yourself. So it's all about how much you would like to put it. But that's my school of thought. My school of thought is that you need to put as much as you possibly can, but also hold back a little bit so that you save it for your conversation. Because otherwise, if everything is laid flat, then the recruiter might as well just look at it and say, okay, fine. And the cool thing with LinkedIn is it allows you to put a lot of your hobbies. And I'm not talking about photography and cricket or football or basketball. But let's say you have a talent, you have a hidden talent. You've been working as a volunteer in saving animals or rescuing pets. And then I know of a person who actually rescues labs for a living and also trains them for special needs people. So, but that's something that no resume will ever share that. But LinkedIn has this ability where you can showcase that little bit of tidbits about yourself. And why is that important? It's important because LinkedIn is a platform for a professional to show your 180 perspective to a potential employer. So it's just not limited to, I know this, I have these skills, but a little bit, you're opening up that little bit about your other side of it, which you probably don't want which probably people don't know. But it's also a good way to give a little bit of insight as a person rather than just as a individual, as that one piece of resume.
I have like the Girl Scouts on my LinkedIn profile, so hopefully they know that I wrangle. I've had up to 20-something girls in our troop. Right now we have 13, but I'm good at wrangling 13 girls camping, and we camp a lot. Right now they're kind of sad because we haven't been camping since February, but I'll tell you, that is a skill all in itself. I measure success of the event as nobody got hurt, I didn't lose anybody, and that's success at the end of the day. And did they have fun? But it's a great thing to talk about, and I wish more recruiters would ask me about it because they might be surprised how much the Girl Scouts do other than just sell cookies.
Yeah, and it shows a little bit of your personality, which is like your ability to manage in tough situations, like as you say, in camping, right? Not everything goes by your plan, right? It's always about thinking out of the box, solving a problem right there and then, right? And making sure you're hearing 13 different opinions, but you being the leader, trying to put all of them together, come to a consensus, build a consensus, and move things forward, right? These things all show up, and these are all these subtleties which a recruiter can always look for and then pick up, and that's also important. Now, it might not be perceived as important in the first cut when you look at it, but it is definitely a matter of pride that you are able to showcase those talents also. It does show up.
So there are, LinkedIn is one portal you're referring to, and sort of creating your profile there. Is there, are there other portals that you feel are fairly or pretty good, or I've personally heard of Indeed, there's Glassdoor, there's many more out there. There's Fairy Godboss, and then there's industry specific ones. So
Yes.
what do you recommend? Which ones do you feel are good, or do you have any preferences?
My preference, as you have seen, is my personal preference has been LinkedIn, because for all the time that I have been recruiting, that's the first place for me to go. I'm not necessarily advocating only for Facebook, but like Indeed is more of a job aggregation site. It actually picks jobs from every place for you to go and research. Glassdoor gives you most information about a company, the public perception of a company, and then their leadership and their opinions on it. So that's a good place to do your research. Indeed is, as I said, is job aggregation. And trust me, even Facebook, right? Back in one of my campaigns, Facebook is a place where we actually actively posted jobs and then solicited potential people from there. But mind you, on Facebook, right? Facebook on your personal side is a lot different than having a Facebook footprint on your professional side. You just have to know the difference between that, right? And I am advocating from your professional perspective that you're absolutely comfortable to have one professional profile for your Facebook, because that's also a place where a lot of younger companies would like to see your social footprint in terms of what you do, and you're good to have that persona also. But there are a few things that I would actually request you all to avoid, right? Mixing profiles, right? Your Facebook personal should not mix with your Facebook professional. That's my opinion, right? Because I would like to, because the people whom, there is a simple rule of thumb that I live by. The people whom I have, my closest friends, they are on Facebook with me. Whereas if there are people whom I have associated with professionally, they are on LinkedIn. The LinkedIn set of people are not going to get my Facebook ID, and vice versa. And that's the rule of thumb that I live by. I'm not advocating it, but it's just more comforting and much more easier for you to manage that.
I will say I did the same thing to Jennifer. When I was working, Jennifer was my boss, by the way. When we worked together, I had a rule of my own, is I'm not going to do a personal Facebook profile or just a connect until, after.
Well, I think that's also more of a tech industry, because when I was at Hitachi Consulting, I was not on Facebook with a lot of people at Hitachi and more on LinkedIn. But I think in our prior job, I think just that business, because the way they work, I think they were more social media people, and that industry, the promotional products, they were all on Facebook. I find more of them there than they were on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think some industries, you're right. There are, they intermingle personal and professional much more so than other industries. Maybe tech industry folks just don't, because we just know all the bad stuff that's happened out there in the world.
More about how code can be broken, or the stealing of cybersecurity.
Yes.
I have a
what is it,
theory.
Cambridge Analytica, all the data mining that's happening? So it's, I do agree with you on that, Satish, that, it's nice to have sort of a little bit of a separation. And I do LinkedIn specifically for my professional, and then Facebook is just purely personal. So have you ever come across any sort of crazy profiles where you really like this candidate, but maybe not so much after you saw their profile online?
I think one of the things that I believe is just my opinion is the fact that there's absolutely no shame in you being the way you are, being opinionated the way you are, but I feel there's a place and there is a way how a lot of these companies do business in terms of hiring these individuals. Please understand that when they hire these individuals, they're looking at it, they're projecting them to be long-term assets for them to grow with the company over a period of time, right? Nobody wants to go through an expensive hiring mistake only for them to reclose that. It's just not worth anybody's time to go through that whole process time and again, right? So I think that's where I think all of we are talking about various personas and others, right? So I think that's where I'm not trying to be too cautious, but I'm just advocating a little bit of a difference there, right? But yeah, to your point, Jennifer, I haven't in my years of working and recruiting, I have actually pretty much stayed away from being very intrusive on somebody's personal life, Ruby, because unless and otherwise, and I know it might sound a little bit buttoned up and stiff, but that's the way how I had. And the philosophy of recruiting is pretty much that, right? I think for us as professionals, we are being asked to hire the right person, look for the right personality traits, and then let the rest of it in terms of the background and others, right? I think there are other teams which do a bang-up job of doing all of that, and there is a separate team that has its legalities and all of those buttoned up to do their part of it. For us as recruiters, look at the personality. If it really talks to you and if it really resonates with the job description, make sure you have that first level connect.
So it's not your first instinct to go out and Google the person's name?
Yes, we do. Yes,
okay, so I just want to caution all recruiters out there for my name, because Jennifer Crowfoot's not a very common name. I am not the writer, and if you'll see why. So now I know both of you are going to go Google my name, and you're going to see.
Oh, I'm going to go see what kind of writing you do.
Yeah, first of all, that kind of creativity is not in my scope. I'll just put it that way, the genre that she writes in. And you will clearly see from our pictures, we are not the same person. So I am not the author, Jennifer Crowfoot. I am the... well, this is what I've decided, having a photo is important on my LinkedIn so that you can see I'm not that writer, so you won't get confused, because it is spelled the same.
I think that's a brilliant segue for putting your personality on LinkedIn, right? So, yeah.
Speaking of pictures, though, are you, so in the 90s, I'm not sure if you guys remember, but there was a big thing where you don't show your picture. You don't, if you have a very ethnic name, you really don't showcase that. Maybe abbreviate it or something like that, or because there's unconscious biases, right? So does that hold true now? I actually had when I was updating my resume, I was sharing I was very proud of my resume because, I designed it and looked really pretty. So I was showing it to one of my friends, and her mom was there, and we were kind of talking, and I, had put my headshot, my face on there. And they're like, well, are you sure you want to do that? And we just had a discussion about it. And for me, at this point, my thought is, if they didn't want me because of the way I looked, whatever, unconscious biases they had, then maybe I'm just not wasting anybody's time. They know it. They're going to bypass. Are companies, is it different now than it was back in the 90s or 80s?
I agree. I agree there that to your point, wherein you really don't want to be a part of a company where they're actually making a judgment of your hire just based on your picture. That's not the place for you to be. Definitely not. Stay away. And you will be happy that happened behind you, and somebody did that, right? Because I don't think it's giving you the right vibes, and the culture is not really right for you to grow professionally. But having said that, unconscious bias does exist. in the industry. And this might sound like aha, but it's true. It happens. But I think you can eliminate that by having that picture, but it's also about your own personal uh, point of view too, right? As to how you would like to express yourself, how you would like to put yourself out there, right? And that's why if you see the picture that I have on my LinkedIn profile, it's a little bit more a sports jacket on and a nice shirt on. That's not the way I dress for every day, but it just so happens to be that I was on February 14th, Valentine's Day, with my daughter for a dance, and I was just prepped up, and my wife said, like, "You do look really good for a change. You don't have your T-shirt on. Let me take a freaking picture." And she said, like, "Use this as your LinkedIn profile." And that's the story of my LinkedIn profile right there.
I'm gonna have to go. Okay, we're gonna have to post this so everyone can see what we're dealing with. Satish, are you okay if we share this with our audience?
Yeah, after all, I look smart, I look good. Go ahead.
You look good. Okay, as long as you approve, we'll be sure to do that.
So there are a few things that I really wanted to talk about because you're talking about bias and stuff, right? There are a couple of things that I will say about don'ts on your resume. A lot of the companies use what we call as the applicant tracking system for collecting all your applications when you apply for your job. There are two things that the systems really don't like, or rather don't really get to when they automate it. They really don't understand few things. One is when you have a resume of yourself, try avoiding to put too many fonts on your resume. It just cuckoos it up really crazily. One is about fonts. Try to stick to an even simpler font. The one that I use personally for myself is Times New Roman. It's a classic. It never goes out of style. It just speaks to you. Just use that. It's simple or Arial. Those two fonts are good for you to call yourself out, and you can always make it bold for sections where you want to say experience skills. I've generally seen people putting various kinds of resume format. Simpler the better. I would say just keep it as simple as you can. Try to bulletize your information that you would want to. A lot of people, unfortunately, become too verbose in saying what they have done, and there is a tendency to write or over describe what you have done. The best thing for you, as I said in the earlier part of when we were talking, is to give the element of like, I would really have to have a conversation rather than put everything out there. So the simple resume, simpler would be better. For me, despite having almost 20 plus years of experience, I have two versions of my profile. One is a very simple one pager for me that describes my high level impact statements that I have accomplished as an individual in companies. And there is another one which is much more bolder, but that can be customized depending on what exactly you would want to project to that particular job. If you're, because it's almost near impossible for anybody with a volume of work to put everything, crunch all of them together in one sheet of paper, because you're not doing justice then, right? But I think you can always talk about some very high level bullets of your accomplishments in your one pager that gives you enough, that gives the recruiter enough information so there is a need to have a conversation. And you can always have a separate set of information collected, and then where you can be a lot more descriptive and narrative for a person once there is an interest, and you can have that information discussed. So that's one quick tip that I would share. And the final thing that I would say is like we try to get too creative by having tables boxed up in rows and columns, and so that it looks neat. But that's a no-no when it comes to all of these applicant tracking systems, because they can't read through those multiple rows and columns. So it's best that if you have to highlight something, you just say, this is your skill, and it's bulletized, and that's all it is. And if you have like 20, I would say trim it down to more which you feel is the high level ones, and then call that out, and then you can talk about them, as I said, on much more elaborate.
Sorry, go ahead, Jennifer.
I was just going to ask on that one pager, how many years back would you get? Because there's a lot of people right now who are out of a job that have 20 plus years
I think
experience. So
for me, fortunately, I have had like 4 employers for a period of time, so it's much more easy for me to call out the sequence that way. But I would say anything more than Jennifer, you had a very valid point. Anything more than 15 years, it just tends to go really bad because by then, if you look at it, with the way how things have evolved, not just with IT, but even otherwise, right? Things have improved. A lot of technologies have improved. You have probably absorbed those a lot of improved technologies over a period of time. That I think is will stay more when you are trying to keep it between 10 to 15 years. Even before that, yeah, I'm not saying that you don't have the experience, but you can always call them out as one line bullets saying that you have worked with these companies in the past, but don't discard that. But you don't really have to go elaborate on them prior to 15 years. Just my.
What is a good size resume? 2 pages, 3 pages?
I would say anything more than 3 pages, you put everybody to sleep. Because if you couldn't really get to your thing within 3 pages, right? Because you should also understand a recruiter once the system does its thing, right? Like in terms of putting the pre-qualifiers and the system says, okay, here you go from the 300 applications. Here are the 10 that the system says, here you go. You should look recruiter for these, right? And in those, even imagine a recruiter has to have that finite amount of time and he's going through sorting through all of these, right? 15 resumes, and that to each one of them, if they are like 10 pages long, the gentleman will just blush over, or the person will just blush over stuff, right? But for you to create that, I would say anything more than 5, it's just like you're just diluting yourself. Really. 5 is just the topmost end of the spectrum. I have generally liked, as a recruiter, my experience is like if I had a resume that was like, I have actually seen a 20-page resume, and frankly, I thought like, why do I really have to spend all of the time for 20 pages worth of information?
Did they write all their code? Like, was it like an all code?
It was a binary. It was ones and zeros.
There is a tendency to see. There is a fine line in terms of overselling yourself and then selling yourself, right? So overselling is like you're writing everything about the project, everything about what you have done. People really understand. An experienced recruiter understands that for you to get to where you are, you have built your portfolio around the way. So you don't have to slam it down the throat of somebody saying that I have done this, I have done that, I have done this, I have done that. They understand because they know that's how a life cycle has progressed. But I think closing around that point, I would say anything up till 5 is good. It's a good number. But my personal favorite is not to go beyond 3.
That's a really good point. So we were talking a little bit about creative resumes, or maybe not being too creative to be the system not being able to pick it up. So I have 2 questions actually. How do you get through to the system? I think that is the biggest question for all of us. Like everything is sorted. Every time we apply online, it's sorted. So what happens?
The takeover of artificial intelligence.
Yeah. So how do we get past that and get noticed? And then the second thing is, when is it okay to have a creative resume, and how do we do that?
So first rule of thumb is to read your job description against which you're applying for your job. That's the first thing. And if you look at it, there are usually a big job description, and there are also some required skills and preferred skills. Required skills is what you need to pay really attention to in terms of what they're really asking from you as a potential candidate. And there are some preferred skills out there. My request would be to read through the required skills and see if they are in alignment with what your current skills are, or even your past skills are, and then project them, right? Those are your quote unquote keywords, for a lack of better word. Those are the ones that they pick up on. And then of course, anything for you, there is no golden answer to get through an applicant tracking system because it picks up on all of these keywords, and typically it is more a combination of the required skills and then the preferred skills. And mind you, sometimes they call out outright on your required skills saying that there is a certain threshold in terms of your education. They might say, I need to have mandatory or must have. These are quote unquote keywords which they are calling out to the system saying that if you don't see a bachelor's degree, then don't send it to me, right? Those are some things that you might have to pay attention to. So the golden rule is look at the job description, read through it thoroughly, and then make sure your profiles that you have, even if you have had that experience, then it is imperative to you to project that, or rather make sure that you call that out in your resume, because that's the only way to make sure that the system at least does its job of actually picking your profile through, and then the rest of it can be obviously through your information or through your interview skills.
So I have a question on about if you've got multiple jobs, or jobs at one company. So do I put all three positions and describe them in detail, or just the last position, describe that one in detail? Because you mentioned earlier, recruiters know you if I had started out as, let's say, a manager and then got promoted to senior manager, do you need all the details about the manager job? Really just focusing on the senior manager, the last position.
I would say it's a senior manager because it's understood in your example that you're giving me. It's imperative that the person is actually qualified to get from a lead to a manager, and from a manager to a senior manager, and then transition maybe from a manager to a director. What's really relevant is what's your current role that you're doing. But in around that, you can always call out very simply saying that there can be one simple bullet that says you have progressed from this to these before you reach there, and over a period of time you're actually calling out your journey. It's like a story, it's like a narration. You're actually saying that this is exactly how you actually progress to where you're progressing. If you feel the fundamental need to call out that you have to say manager, senior manager, and team lead and so on, that's a nice way to actually draft that one sentence which says that there is a journey that was there before you reach to a place where you are a director.
Let's say our resume finally made it through the system because of all the great tips you just explained to us. Now what? We get an HR interview. The recruiter looks at our resume. We get an HR interview, and what do we talk about on the interview? What are we supposed to divulge and not to divulge?
Typically, as much as sometimes the job seekers see it's frustrating to go through several rounds of interview, there is a method to the madness usually. And recruiters are the first ones to have that first conversation with the potential job seeker. And the idea behind that exercise is to understand whether you're a fit or not. They are not trying to have a conversation to judge you from a technology or, from that matter, experience perspective, but they're trying to understand your personality. That's your moment to talk about what you do, what you have done. But one thing I would avoid in that first level conversation is to become too, the favorite word for me, too verbose. Keep it compact. Stick to your script. If needed, prepare a script for yourself on your first interview. And 99% of the time, the calls are always scheduled for you. They work with you. They put a calendar. So prep yourself mentally as to what you would like to. This is your one shot when you have to make that first impression, and make it the best impression. And by that, I mean, rehearse what you have done, what you have sent. Make sure that you have taken enough notes on the submission of the resume that you have made. Make sure you articulate those information. And now it's your time to add your personal flavor of that one thing that I was talking about. Hey, by the way, do you know I also did this? Do you know I have that? Now you have this person hooked to your conversation. He will be your representative. He will be the guy who will work with the hiring manager to say, here you go. I have 10 of them. These are the 3 that I spoke to. Of these 3, these are my choices, 1, 2, and 3. And the manager will definitely ask, why 1, why 2, why 3? There comes your recruiter acting as your proponent, or he is your active marketer now. So use that opportunity to make sure you put your best foot forward. And most importantly, be yourself, but don't make yourself too salesy in that. Just make sure you're your own, the personality shines, and also make sure you stick to a specific. If you feel that you are comfortable writing a script and talking about it, do it. But if you feel that you can be extempore, that's up to you. It's up to a particular person.
I was going to say, Jigna, that was really good, though, I think, because I can be verbose. I know Jigna can be, too. That's why we decided to do a talk show, right? So I like that idea of, like, maybe I need to I don't know if I do a full script, but just some bulleted points to make sure I hit these and not to feel like I have to, like, you're saying, divulge everything. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you don't want to live with a regret later on saying that, oh, I should have said that. So these are your talking points. When I talk about script, it's as I said, it's up to your comfort if you want to prepare a speech. Because
that's a good point. So let's say I just bombed my recruiter interview and it just didn't go so well. Is there a saving grace? Is there any redemption at all?
Good question. And I think you can always go back. Usually recruiters do let you know, here's my number, here's my email. If you feel like you need to have a conversation, please get back to me with that, right? So in your example that you're talking about, Jigna, if you feel like you left something at the table and you felt like you really wanted to talk about this, maybe, and I would always recommend a good closeout is like after your conversation is done, internalize those for a couple of hours and then go back with a thank you email to the recruiter. And that's your opportunity to say, if you missed out on something, now you can say, it's your moment to say, hey, by the way, in our conversation, I think I forgot to, or rather, this is the place where you can say, I also did this, or rather, I can add value here. Maybe that's a place where your recruiter looks at that saying, oh, he didn't say that. Okay, but I have something right in front of you. That's your opportunity to do so. 2 things I would highly recommend you not to do is to be a stalker. Do not stalk the recruiter, because we have this overwhelming urge that wherein we feel like this is your dream job and you now hit the nail on the head, you want to go for it. There is this urge to say, like, you bombard the guy with as much information as you can, saying that, can I get to know? Can I get to know? Give them space. Give the recruiter space. Let him internalize, or let him or her internalize what exactly is the takeaway from your information. And trust me, a good recruitment team will always come back to you saying that, hey, thank you very much. You made it. This is your next steps. Thank you very much. Sorry, we didn't make it. That's also another place where you can always ask, like, is there anything that you felt as a gap? But please be aware that that is a place where you might be ghosted. You might not get a response because the guy has probably, or the person has moved on to something else, right? But there's an opportunity to have a conversation. The other thing that I always suggest is this, and it works for me. It's up to you if you're comfortable. It's like, don't mind asking the question, saying that if you got thank you but no thank you. Always make sure that you leave them, check with that person whether they will be interested in connecting with you on LinkedIn for future conversations. That is something that you can do. So even the person will remember you, wherein even after they have said a polite thank you but no thank you, that you come back as a professional to say, I would like to still keep in touch with you. This is for your future. Remember, you are always looking for your future to make sure, because this person, whenever he moves from one job to another job, that will make an impact on that particular person, saying that that person call me, or rather help me connect, or rather make that small nuance gesture for yourself so that it helps.
That's a really good point. I didn't think about connecting, making that connection for just ongoing conversations that might take place. So I'm going to start doing that moving forward. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot more rejections than I will, but the okay. So I'll have a larger connection by the end of this whole thing.
And the beauty of that is that don't feel too disheartened by those rejections, because I look at it as more of a place where you are actually genuinely making an opportunity to connect in the professional world. And you're just basically putting yourself ahead of others. That's basically how I look at it. And there's nothing harm, and 9 or 10 times do expect saying that, oh, I don't want to connect with you. But that's fine. But at least you have to make that sincere attempt to make sure that you keep connecting, to make sure your connections are spreading.
And when you talk about salaries,
there's never a right or wrong time, Jigna.
Okay.
And a lot of recruiters would like to, as a part of their pre-prepared questionnaire, there are certain things that they really have to mandatorily ask, right? One is about your work authorization status. One is your interest in relocation. If you really apply for a job that's out of state and you really have, the first question a recruiter will naturally ask you is like, you are in Jersey, you applied for a role in Texas. Why so, right? And you have to have a reason as to why you're actually looking for the role. And sometimes you just have to be prepared. Those relocations is more personal on your cost, but not on the company. But there's absolutely no harm in asking that question, saying that, hey, will you pay for my relocation? But point aside, on the conversation about salary, right? That's one of the things that usually recruiters ask for in your conversation itself, because they would like to know whether you have a buffer, what's your threshold on minimum and max. And it's not necessarily a must-ask question, but I would approach it from a perspective of, for you to know more on an inquiry perspective, right? You can always ask on your first conversation, how much is the budget for that particular role? That's a nicer way to check whether they are able to afford you or not.
I like that. What's the budget for that role? That's great. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's now no, because there are certain, I know there are some there are majority state laws does not allow you to ask for your current salary or your income history, but it's always right for them to establish whether you had an income history, not the exact amount, but whether you had a history of earning. Nothing wrong with it, but I think that's a way of asking too. Instead of them asking, you could also check and show whether that's something that you would like to be.
What if I'm not comfortable with sharing that information? I really am not comfortable with sharing how much I want, and looking for. Is it okay for me to just say, hey, what is the budget? And generally, do recruiters share that information? And what do you do if we're being pressed for that? Let's say the recruiter just keeps asking, what are you looking for? What are you looking for? How can we say?
It's a polite, you can always have, if you are unprepared for that conversation, if you're not really willing to, you can always be absolutely forthright and say, I'm not willing to have that conversation on the first one because I would like to see a little bit more before I actually have that. Because please understand, job seeker just doesn't mean that you're at the mercy of the employer, right? Because there is a reason why the person is connecting with you. You have a potential skill against which the person is trying to recruit for. It's not like, hey, yeah, there are probably 100 other applicants who might be qualified as you are, but I think you are not supposed to do things that you're not comfortable with. If you're not comfortable sharing with it, I think you have every right to say that I don't feel I'm comfortable with sharing that information. And any professional recruiter will actually respectfully agree to that.
It's good information.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about too, as you're saying that, like being able to say that to someone, if we want to go further in the conversation, I want to understand everything in the job encompasses so that you don't oversell yourself or undersell yourself in that amount, because maybe what they're asking you to do is a higher set of price tag on yourself based on once you learn more about what the job is versus what they're telling you. Because sometimes too, I feel like, not always, but sometimes I feel like recruiters or that screening interview person too in bigger companies, sometimes it's not even the recruiter, right? It's some associate who works for the recruiter and they're asking you questions. And if you ask them questions about the job's back, they're like, oh no. Are they like, so, right? That's once you get in with that hiring manager and those people, I think that's really where you get to understand the full breadth of the job and what you bring to the table, what that value really is.
So my personal take is this: if the very first question that comes out of the mouth of a recruiter who's talking to you is like, "What's your expectation on your compensation?" Run far away. If you don't think that is that, because fundamentally, I think then the motive behind that interview is different. So, and if it's not aligning with your motive, then I think you have every right to walk away from that conversation. See it.
That's a very tough thing to do when for a lot of these individuals, 44 million really, that are hurting for money and job because they have to put food on their tables. A lot of them don't have those liberties, and I'm not sure there can be anything done about it. I'm just sort of reflecting. I think more so than anything is just it sucks a lot of times that people don't have those options or opportunities to say no. And whoever's listening out there, I guess, whoever the hiring manager is or recruiter, don't do that. I guess be nice to these people. They need a job, and there's a reason. So just tell them what your expectations are in terms of salary. Don't badger the candidate and move from there.
And I think you have to be true to your own self, right? I think at the end of the day, I understand what your statement was about getting a job, but also it's about the kind of environment that you want to work for and the kind of company that you would really want to be associated with. That's also something that has to be your priority to do, because I think at the end of the day, please understand this: if cost is the only thing that they are concerned about, but think about it like you can be eventually replaced if there is a cheaper available candidate who is going to come in too, right? So you have to. There's a reason why I am a proponent where you might want to walk away from a conversation where it's only about numbers, and if you're not comfortable about it, there's no harm that you do. And I'm sure there are jobs, there are definitely roles that will make themselves available for if you just stay persistent and then be confident in that. It's
Yeah.
not a question of your confidence, to be honest with you, Jigna, because you have the skills.
We had a gentleman last week. We were filming an episode, and Shiv Mohan was his name, and he was talking a little bit about how during this time, this economic downturn, his request or thought was that the folks that do have a job right now, maybe they don't apply and allow for the folks that are looking for it, don't have one, that are sort of victims of this of what's happening. Just allow them to go and get a job and help the economy. What is your thought around that?
As much genuine and sincere it sounds, I think it's very tough to say that not to apply, because I think the motive for looking for a job, of course, because of the situation that pandemic has created, is definitely. I hope it's once in a generation. I really don't wish it on anybody, because it's just a generational thing. Having said that, even at this time, there are probably people who are aspiring for better roles, and they are also applying, and they are probably gainfully employed. But there is no way for us to talk them out of it, because it's obviously their careers and they are respectfully trying to get to the next level, and maybe they found another one which probably coincides with the skill set somebody has, and unfortunately they have been laid off in the current circumstances. But I think you just have to, as I said, it's all about the focus, and it's all about yourself. Like I think it's all about the strength within you, and then you have to believe that the work that you have and the skill that you have it will basically lead you to what it is. And I'm not trying to sound like a fool's gold paradise here, but I'm just saying that as long as the self-belief is what comes across. If you see in a lot of these interviews, it's all about self-belief and the confidence in your own self, right? Because there might be 10 different people with the same thing, but it's all about your personality shining through in all of these in all of these phone interviews.
Makes sense. Jennifer, anything else? I'm all out of questions, actually. Can you imagine?
Wow. Yeah. No, I can't imagine. I think this has all been really helpful and insightful to think about. I know I definitely have gotten some great tips out of today, and some things that I can do differently and work on some things in my resume, things to prep for when having that recruiter screening interview, and just things to do afterwards. So I really appreciate it. I think we're in a good place here. So this is good information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. Thanks, Jennifer, for the time. I really enjoyed this conversation. And I hope whatever little information that I have been able to share is helpful for everybody. And my only thing, my final thoughts on this is like, stay positive. Everything will pass, and trust your ability. Trust your ability. It has gotten you to where you are. You might be just a victim of the current circumstances, but it in no shape or form defines you. You are a lot more stronger than what you are.
Thank you. I need to print that out and put it on my mirror so I can read it every day.
There you go. Okay, what time is it, Jigna?
Cookie time.
Fortune cookie time. Ooh, you have one for Satish. All right. Yes.
I do.
So Satish, we always open a fortune cookie and have a fortune. So she has one for you as well that she's going to open and read your fortune. So who you pick, who you want to open first, yours, mine, or Jigna's?
Let's start with you.
All right, let's see. I can make the noise. Da da da. Oh, this one's like all really in the deep. Okay, so there must be something really good. Oh, this one I think I can do. This is somebody else's fortune, really. You're going to compliment 3 people every day. So maybe if I compliment 3 people every day, that's going to bring some really good luck to me. So, which reminds me, on LinkedIn, you can add, now if you haven't seen, there's a feature where you can give kudos to people on LinkedIn. So maybe that's what I need to work on, is giving kudos to 3 people every day on LinkedIn that I've worked with in the past. But yeah.
Perfect. You can start with us.
I will, absolutely.
You stole my thunder.
All right, Satish is next.
Jigna, are you?
It's you, Jigna.
Okay. And next. All right, let's do this. All right, what does mine say? Mine says, courage comes through suffering. Oh, it sure does. And I have suffered. I've suffered a lot.
Okay, so Fred had that one a couple weeks ago, if you remember.
You had that?
No, Fred had that a couple weeks ago.
I did. Okay,
Yeah.
Well, he and I can actually go and share our suffering.
Okay, now this one's
Over a
for
glass of
Satish.
wine or
Drum roll.
All right, Satish, this is yours. Oh, I think this is quite profound. A person's character is his destiny.
All right, say that one more time again.
A person's character is his destiny.
Person's character is his
Wow.
destiny. Is it Sleeping Beauty's character is your destiny?
Since you've been drinking out of the...
Go take a nap.
It's time. Wow, Jennifer, that was amazing. I'm still processing a lot, and I can't wait to start incorporating all those suggestions, because I really didn't know a lot of this stuff. Having been in the industry and just working for a very long time, things have changed over a decade, 2 decades, whatever it might be. So going back into applying for jobs now is such a different ballgame. So I'm definitely going to take Satish's advice and incorporate some of his suggestions. How about you?
Big thing for me has been it's okay to keep it simple. That principle, right? The KISS principle, to keep it simple, stupid, right? Not that I'm stupid, but I think that principle there in mind is just thinking that I'm kind of refreshed by, that I don't have to be super elaborate, and I can just get down to the very simplistic things and basics, and really shine that way through LinkedIn and my resume, and even that intro interview with a recruiter. and have those basic things to write down that I want to make sure I highlight. So I really appreciated that, especially I think it's good advice to folks who are verbose like myself. So thank you, Satish.
Absolutely.
All right, so next coming up, our episode, just stay tuned. You can subscribe right here at the end of this video. There will be a button that shows up. It may be showing up right now here on YouTube. Use that little button, subscribe if you haven't done so already. And that way, you'll make sure you catch the next episode for sure. Thanks.
You can always check out our posts on LinkedIn as well as Facebook and Instagram and LaidOffLife.co.
Yep. Thank you so much. See you next time.